Good morning, good morning. Welcome to Braveheart Conversations. We're super happy to be here today with you again every Thursday morning. You can find us, thank you, wherever you're here from today, whether that's Facebook or Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, all the things. We want to say thank you for listening in, regardless where you're coming from. If you would like to join us live every week, we are here on Facebook in our Facebook group, Braveheart Conversations. So you can find us at facebook.com/groups/Braveheart Conversations. And today, Marie has a topic for us, and I'm super excited to chat about it. This is actually something that comes up really often for me as a challenge when people are talking about relationship issues and some of the frustrations that they have. And this is really our responsibility in our communication, and that is clarity. It's knowing what we want, right? We often are giving very mixed messages about what we want because we haven't even clarified what we want. I know when I teach in my course Unapologetic, one of the hardest worksheets that we do is our boundaries manifesto, and that is clarifying what our rights are and what the consequences are when those rights are violated. And that's such a challenging worksheet because it's a question that we don't often ask ourselves, if ever. Some people never ask themselves what their rights are, what their desires are. Like, those are really important things that we get to take responsibility for before we can ever communicate that well. And so sometimes people put the cart before the horse and they're like trying to work on their communication. But if you don't know what you're communicating, then we kind of have an issue.
And the other person's confused too.
Very. And I can think of examples in my own life where it was very push-pull. People didn't understand what I wanted. I actually broke down a lot of, I damaged trust in my relationships because I would set a boundary and then I would renege on it. You know, I would say, like, for example, I don't want you to smoke in my car. That was a big desire, right? That was a boundary. Don't smoke in my car. But then, like, as soon as he'd get anxious and he'd get
start feeling that tension,
right? And as soon as, like, he would ask, you know, well, what if I crack the window, or what if, you know, and then I would give in. And so then I have violated my own boundary now. And so now nobody's clear. Now he can't trust that when I say I want something, he can't trust that I really want it, or I really want it that badly, because every time there's just a small little, well, what if this, then...
Because people push on those. They always do.
Right. So it's very, very important that we have clarity and we know when we really want something. I learned, as far as boundary setting goes and being clear there, is if I didn't feel like I had to wait until I was really strong, until I really knew what I wanted. I think one of the pitfalls that I fell into was getting angry about something and then immediately trying to communicate or set that boundary when I didn't even really have clarity yet about what I wanted. And then again, I would get into that pitfall where I would just not, I would renege on my boundary. I would be inconsistent. So waiting until I really had clarity that, yes, this was a hill to die on, and yes, I'm willing to enforce the consequences. Because if I just in anger say, you know, this is what I want, and then I'm not willing to enforce the consequences for that, I'm not willing to follow through, then I've really disrespected myself, and I've set the stage for the other person to then not ever take me seriously.
Same things happen to me where the trust is the big thing, is how can they trust me if I'm not clearly communicating, and I'm doing that back and forth thing. It's confusing, Or one of the things I used to do, I sometimes still do it, is when you're not quite clear, so you're trying to say whatever it is, and then it becomes this big long story, and they're not engaged, and they're like, what, you said something, or it's just this runaround because I might be afraid to say what my boundary is. So it's those things, and then what my actual boundaries kind of lost in there. So not having clarity also is confusing to people, and then they can't support you. Like, it's very possible that person that you're communicating with wants to support you on what your boundary is or what your request is, but they can't because, well, one, they can't trust you because you can't trust you, and two, because it's just not clear to them what exactly you're wanting.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, when I start to get into the like not being specific and I'm talking way too much, it's generally I'm defending. I'm explaining. It's not just a clear-cut boundary. Hey, please don't X, Y, Z. It's, well, please don't because blah, 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 when I was 12, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like you go on and on and on. And then all of those justifications and the defensiveness becomes targets where you can get
Push
into
points,
an argument instead of just this is what I'm requesting. So I found that the more simple I am in just communicating my desire and a boundary, a requirement, those are two different things.
Right.
But when I am clear about either, and it's just one sentence, right? It doesn't have to be a whole description. And I know I've shared before one of the best acronyms for me, which is JADE. I don't have to justify, argue, defend, or explain my decisions.
Justify was the big word that I came up with too. It's just, it is because it is. It is because this is what I need, whatever it is. Joe and I talk about, he is a slow guy in the morning. We call him Eeyore and I'm a Tigger, right? And his request is, please don't jump on me in the morning, or, you know, I have to be very easy and calm and quiet when I've already been up for a couple of hours, right? I'm ready to go. However, his request is that, and I honor it. It's very simple. Please don't jump on me. Very simple, one sentence, and I'm very clear, and that allows him to get up and be slow in the morning and get his groove on and slowly ease into the day. And it's very clear communication. He does say why, but he doesn't have to. It is because it is. No justification. It's just what he needs.
Right. I also want to talk about how just because you're clear, just because you communicate well, does not guarantee
that your message gets through.
that your message gets through, or that you get a positive response. That has nothing to do with you. Your ability to know your boundaries and your desires and communicate them clearly has nothing to do with how other people will choose to respond. That's on them. So I do choose to have in my inner circle only people who respond well to boundaries. I honor their boundaries and they honor mine. And that is a requirement to be in my inner circle. However, I have other people outside of my inner circle because we have to set boundaries all the time, right? Or we get to set boundaries all the time. And it's a beautiful indicator of the health of that relationship when you set boundaries, because they will inform you very quickly how they what their true colors are, and if they're interested in respecting your boundary or not. And sometimes the response then is dismissal, you know, well, you're just making a big deal out of nothing, or
the pushback, like on trying to push, I don't know what the word is, you know, like the no smoking in the car.
Well,
like
what if this?
Yeah, what if,
that?
you know, adding those, this little push a little harder, but maybe this. Yeah.
Yep, I've gotten a lot of the, you know, you're making a big deal out of nothing, you're being dramatic, you're, you know, we can do, you know, this other way, or I understand that boundary, but I should be an exception. That's or just blatant disregard. They might say okay and then continue to do the behavior as if you said nothing. You know, there's a lot of different responses to boundaries that inform me about that relationship, and it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with where they're at and how they respect boundaries. And so, it could have something to do with me if I didn't communicate clearly.
Sure.
But if I know that I have clearly stated a boundary and those are the responses, that's not something that I get to own. And I used to think, if I just explained better, if I just
hit him with a 2x4 first.
But there's lots of times I've explained more than well enough. It's been very clear. And sometimes you get in those situations where you're like, okay, it's been years that I've explained this boundary. Like, I know that it's not a matter of this person not understanding. I'll give a personal example. This last week, a boundary for me that's still a little new over the last year. I've had some significant trauma with substance abuse, not myself, but having partners and loved ones struggling with substance abuse and alcohol, and it really makes things unenjoyable for me. And it doesn't feel safe. And so this last year I gave myself permission to say my home, my space is a safe place for me, and I am going to say it's a substance-free and alcohol-free home. And at first that felt like, ooh, can I really do that? Because everybody thinks it's normal. And this is one place where I get to set the rules that work for me.
It feels safe.
It feels safe. And I got some pushback this week. There was a person that came over, and they were already drunk, but they had brought alcohol with them, and wanted to bring alcohol in. And I said, actually, this is an alcohol-free home, and you're not going to be able to bring that inside.
Which is super hard.
Oh man, I get adrenaline. It's tough, but I was very clear. It was just a very simple sentence. I'm so sorry, but this is an alcohol-free home, and you're not going to be able to bring that inside. And at first there was a bit of shock because people aren't used to having boundaries set that clearly, and there was no wiggle room. And the response was actually pretty condescending. And so what is interesting though is I didn't have to get into a dialogue about it. This is
or
the
justify
rule.
it, or
And it is what it is, but their behavior informs me if this is going to be a safe relationship or not. And that is very helpful. So when you communicate clearly, when you get clear about what it is that you want and what your requirements are, people's reaction to that is going to be gold for you. And I know that there are some women out there who say, and men too, but people that will say, my picker is broken, I just keep getting into these toxic relationships. Well, very often this is the key for you. If you aren't clear in your desires and boundaries and requirements, we often are accommodating. So when people react to whatever we want in this way, then we adjust ourselves for them. But I get to celebrate today when somebody has a reaction like that man did, and I can go, I literally repel the people that are toxic for me. I literally, they cannot stand me.
Yeah.
Which is great. I'm like, yay.
It's clear communication back to you.
Yep. It's, I get to see their true colors loud and clear. And in the past, I would have just owned that as something I needed to fix. Right? I'm being so rude. I need to adjust myself for them. No, you've just told me very clearly how you respect other people. And that's really
what else I like about your story, I like that you were very clear. Had you beat around the bush or hemmed and hawed and just kind of it wouldn't have been that big stop, right? Right as you're opening the door. That was just I could just see that there are occasions that sometimes we are accommodating, and we worry about either losing that friendship or losing that relationship, or causing a riff or a contention. Cause a scene. Yeah, we don't want to cause a scene.
Being inconvenient.
Being inconvenient. All of those things. And then we put ourselves in the back seat. And then what are we? We're going to be resentful. We're going to be resentful, probably pissed, and all these things. And it has nothing to do with them. And we're probably mad at ourselves, right? Because how can you trust yourself if you can't clearly say what you want?
And that was everything that came up for me. I had the good girl voice that came up. That was, he was just mirroring that, the judgment. Like, you're a prude, you're stuck up, you're a snob, you're a goody two shoes. Like, all of those old wounds, and the good girl voice came up. And I was able to just observe that in him, and observe that in myself. And then there was that part of me that is the goddess part of me that's like, fuck yeah, like, you just stood up for yourself. And as much as I don't like being disliked, I also really felt good in myself. Like,
and that feels better than not being liked.
It feels better.
Feeling good in your heart and your soul feels so much better than not being liked.
And it was like
because I'd rather have a few really good quality relationships than those kind of superficial.
Yeah, and they tell on themselves
very easily.
Yeah,
hi Jackie, hi Loretta.
Yeah, so that's very helpful to me. As just, it's that goddess that's like, lean back, observe, and just observe the true colors, and then make your next response instead of trying to manage everything that's happening and try to manipulate.
Which is exhausting.
Yeah, because I could have then tried to cater to that relationship and save it and, like, make him like me, and that just wasn't even. That would be old behavior, and it just.
It's dishonoring to him too.
It is. It is, because that was where he was at in that moment, and that's fine. It wasn't a fit for my home, and that's so much of what I teach too. It's not a matter of somebody else being bad and wrong, and no judgment for the lifestyle that he chooses. It's just not what's going to be in my home, and so getting clear about that is so vital. What do you want your home space to look like? What requirements do you have for your home space? What requirements do you have for your inner circle of people? What requirements do you have for your romantic relationship? And requirements can feel like an uncomfortable word. It was for me. But it's so important to get comfortable with that terminology, because that is our backbone. We're so used to being soft and accommodating, and those things can be beautiful too. But it's soft front, tough back, as Brene Brown talks about. Soft front, tough back. And we can be very good at the soft front and not good at the tough back. And so that's more of what I teach, is that tough back. Because especially for us women, very often we've learned how to have a soft front and not a tough back. Your requirements are your backbone. Your rights, another word that was really sticky for me. Like, well, I have a right to, but how funny is it that I can identify that in other people? You have a right to. How many times do we say, you deserve better? We can see that in somebody else, but do we honor that in ourselves? I have the right to a safe home. I have the right to constructive conversations. I have the right to not be called names. There's so many things. And when I get comfortable with saying I have the right to this, and then it's my responsibility to set consequences in place. Yes, clearly communicate and enforce the consequences when that right is violated. And I can easily see that in other people, but very often that's hard for me to practice. So
look at that girl in the mirror.
Yeah. And the people around you are simply a reflection of those inner voices. So,
They came into your life for a reason.
so the conflict that you have with your partner or your, whoever shows up at your doorstep, like the conflict that shows up is simply mirroring that inner voice that the good girl, or if you're experiencing judgment when you set a boundary, usually that's our own hang-ups. Well, I can't because blah blah blah. So yeah, what are some other things that come up for you around communicating clearly what your desires are? What are some conflicts that happen with couples when they try to set boundaries?
Well, I want to go back to the support, because a lot of times women want support and they get frustrated when their partner doesn't. And I'm saying women, men do too, but it's usually the women that are frustrated that they're not getting the support. Well, I set the boundary and they were wishy-washy about it, and they get frustrated because they're not communicating it, but he doesn't clearly get the message. One particular example was someone who was upset that she wasn't getting the respect that she deserved. However, when the boundaries would come up, then it was like, okay, right? Like, again, she could clearly see it in the other people, the other relationships, but not in herself. And so I'm just thinking that if you want that support, someone to support you in what you want and you desire, if the more clear you are, the more, the easier it is to support you. And the other thing that came up was sometimes if you're not clear, it's difficult to trust your partner on that. So if for some reason someone communicated a boundary but not very clearly, and they said one thing but meant something else, then that trust, it's like, oh, okay, I can go do this thing. I'm trying to use an example without being too... Anyway, the example was one partner communicated, it's okay to go do this thing, right? And then when that person did that thing, they were like, oh, wait, I was just trying to please you, right? Wait, I didn't really mean that. And you're going, but how can I trust? Because I'm used to this communication happening a certain way, and then it was not twisted, but they weren't clear. And then the unclarity, what's the word? When I'm not clear, or when that person's not clear, then I don't know how to handle that, or my partner doesn't know how to handle that. They can't trust what's being said, and then it just gets
I think
messy.
The honest communication is so
There we go.
important, because if you are simply trying to please your partner but you're being inauthentic, that's lying. Just pure and simple, like you're lying to your partner. If you say to your partner, this is okay, and really inside it's not, you're lying, and that is going to create mistrust in your relationship, or vice versa. It is
and sometimes
hard.
It's old patterns, which is really what happened in this person's miscommunication.
Totally.
An old pattern came up. Would have never communicated that way, but it's surprises you sometimes.
That's what happens for me when my good girl takes over, right? Because my good girl wants to please everybody else above anything else. Like, I just want to be liked, I just want to be loved, and
which we all do, right?
But I just become a bitch to that, right? So then what do I sacrifice? I end up sacrificing authenticity, I end up sacrificing honesty, I end up sacrificing courage. Like, those are the things that I end up sacrificing when I'm in people-pleasing mode.
You end up being resentful.
Yes, because then inevitably I'm going to say, something is okay, and it's not, then they're going to do it, and then I'm going to be upset. Well, I created that.
Right.
So, yeah, it's very important to be honest in our relationships, even when that takes so much courage. It takes courage to say, no, that actually doesn't feel good, and I don't want that to happen anymore. There's fear that comes up. There's, it took courage to speak my boundary about no alcohol in my home, because I get fearful of the response, right, that happened. And when I'm courageous enough to do it anyway, I'm being honest with myself, I'm being honest with the other person, and I'm honoring of all parts of me.
And the exceptions rule, because sometimes we do make exceptions. That's not very authentic either. Like, this person can, or this person can't, or they're my family. Yep. I've seen those, experienced those, done those.
Yeah.
Where, it's just my family, so it's okay. Because that pattern has been going on for a really long time. So we give them some kind of a, what do you call it, a pink slip?
Yeah, a pass.
Pass, that's it. Pass.
Give them a pass. Yeah, I think that this comes up a lot with family for sure.
Sometimes friends that you don't want to lose.
Or spouses. I feel like this is a big one that, because they're XYZ, I should be patient. I should be more accommodating, all the things. But the thing is, your boundaries have no power if you give someone an exception. If there are no consequences when a right is violated, you've given that person then the power to rule your life. You're at their mercy, and that's a very unloving position to be in. And until we can really own the idea that truly what honors me honors everyone, that when I honor my boundaries, I'm actually honoring the other person no matter who they are, we're going to keep falling into that hole until we really internalize and believe that.
Stand up. Have the courage.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage. I love that you brought up, the honesty piece, because sometimes we're not being honest with ourselves, and then we're not being honest with the other person. Or for me, what was huge, I had a big wound. I wanted other people to set my boundaries for me. I didn't want to have to speak them. That was a very big resentment for me. I thought people should just know.
Exactly.
People should just know how to respect me.
If you loved me.
And so it was a really big thing for me to let go of that idea that other people were responsible, and then take responsibility for setting and honoring my own boundaries.
Well, that's what empowers you. When we take our own responsibility, we feel empowered. No matter how tough it is, it strengthens our core, and we feel that powerful statement coming out. Like, I just did that.
Yeah, it's a big thing to celebrate. The other thing that came up when you were speaking was clarity in if I say, Marie, I need you to respect me more.
Yeah.
That's super vague.
Super vague.
You're not going to have any clue what I'm saying, because respect to you may be totally different than what I'm saying. And so being specific about what it is you want. If I say, Marie, I'm really craving comfort. Can you give me a hug? That's very specific, right? Marie, I need more respect. Can you please, show up on time? There's those are the things that are their specific requests, instead of beating around the bush. We're assuming that the other person knows what you're talking about. When there's assumptions, that's really going to get you into trouble. Specifically saying, honey, I want you to put your phone down when you're talking to me. I want you to hold my hand more in public. Any of those things, be specific. Be clear about exactly what you want, because there's a lot of miscommunication that happens when we're just using fluffy words.
And most often people will most often people want to support you,
Mm-hmm.
and they just don't know how.
Or you'll explore a deeper issue. Sometimes
Exactly.
if you make a request and you say, you know, I want you to hold my hand more, maybe there's something deeper. Maybe there's some, well, I want to, but I always feel like you pull away, or I don't
whatever
know.
the issue is.
But whatever is happening, like if you make a specific action request, you'll get to reveal something underneath that. When you have those specific conversations.
Well, that's how your relationship gets deeper and better, is because you're very clear. Do we have any questions?
I don't see any. I appreciate everybody being here.
We just have really good listeners.
We do. With that, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up today, unless any of you guys want to pop in with a question. But yeah, this has been great. Clarity is like where it all starts. It's the most important responsibility.
Most important for me to be clear.
Yes. That is your side of the street.
That's your side of the street.
My side of the street is being clear about what I want and need and communicating that. And so I don't get to have any control over how other people react, but I have 100% responsibility of what I say, how I communicate, and how clear I am. So with that, let's wrap up this week. We would love to hear any questions or comments that you have about what's been shared today, or if you have a topic request, we always love those as well. You can reach out to me at defytheaverage@gmail.com, or Marie
at mariesgold.com. And if you disagree with us, tell us that too, because we love that inquiry and diving in and exploring those issues. So yeah,
definitely. We are all about the courageous conversations.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We want great relationships.
And that requires vulnerability and honesty and courage. Yeah, totally. So send us all the things. And again, you can see us every week on our Facebook group page.
On Thursdays.
Which is facebook.com/groups/Braveheart Conversations. And you can find us on all the other podcast platforms. With that, I hope you have a fantastic week, and we will see you all again next Thursday.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.